Okay, in the last video, you answered the question, what are 4 things that your perfect match is interested in that has nothing to do with your product or service? So depending on what your industry is, who your perfect match is, those answers are going to be different probably for every one of you. So for me, I'm going to use my jewelry company as an example. For me, one of the things that most of my dream clients would be interested in is nature, because they use natural stones, natural products, so they're probably going to be interested in other things about nature. They also may be interested in some type of natural eating healthy, or in natural remedies and things like that. So those are some things that I can write about that are outside the jewelry rim that are going to capture their attention. Now, if they're interested in jewelry made from natural stones, they may also be interested in the property of those stones. That is a little bit about the jewelry industry, but it's really about the stones themselves, whether they purchase it in jewelry or just to lay around the house or in anything decorative that they want to use it for. They're learning more about the stones. So it's not about my product. So those are some things that when I do my newsletter, I can write about that will capture the attention of my dream customer because they have those interests. So I want you to think about what interest your dream customer would have. And we're going to talk about some other things that will help to capture and hold their attention. So we'll do that in the next section. Right now we're going to talk about the different elements of a newsletter and what you need to make sure that you're including in your newsletter to make it really something that people look forward to getting. So the very first one is you want to make sure you have a catchy title. You know, the title is everything. That captures attention and brings them in, or they skim it and they think they know what it's about and they're like, I don't think so. So, you know, just for instance, when I write the magazine, I try and think about what we're writing. And in the last issue, I wrote one about essential oils, and I wrote about my grandmother when I was little telling me my head feels crazy. So that was the title of the article was, "Oh, my head feels crazy." So, you know, people are going to say, "What? You know, what is that about? I need to read that." Another one I wrote was, I've done a lot of family history research. You know, it was about an ancestor who fell over the side of a boat, but he grabbed the rope, and luckily he did, or I wouldn't be here. But the name of that article was Grabbing the Rope. It wasn't anything to do necessarily with the article. It was, but people didn't know that until they got into the article to see how it tied in. But it grabs their attention and makes them think about okay, what is this? I've got to find out more. So you want a catchy title for whatever you're doing. The next one is we're going to make sure that the newsletter is unique. We don't want it to be just a cookie cutter one that's going to be like everybody else is going out. We talked about that already, about picking some topics that are going to be relevant to your dream customer. So make sure that it's different than what everybody else is putting out, just about their own industry or about the sales that they have going on. You want to always go for quality. So you always want to make sure that you're doing quality articles. Even if you put fewer in there, you want to make sure that they really have some value to the person that you're sending out. And then you want to talk to your reader. You want to make it very conversational, just as if they were sitting across the desk or the table from you. You don't want it to be so technical. Of course, in this area, you could get pretty technical, and people would follow along pretty easily since we have so many people with advanced degrees in this area. Depends on your subject matter. But normally, you want to let your personality come through. You want it to be something that's very, very open and just like having a conversation with someone. And you want to make it very easy to read. By making it easy to read, you want to make sure that you have headings, you have subheadings, and then you have the content. So by headings and subheadings, that means bigger font in bold. So you want your main heading for your newsletter. You want the subheading for each section to be a little bit bigger than the body and a heavier weight, so bold or a bigger font. You want to make sure that your fonts are consistent so it's easy on the eyes. Anything that you can, put in bullet points, because the easier it is to skim over it, the more interested people are going to be in it. And try to inform instead of advertise. Of course, we've already talked about that one, and I've written some of these. I'm actually looking at my computer, so if y'all can't tell that. And then listen to your subscribers. You know, once we look over the metrics and the things that are actually getting results for you, start targeting those things. We'll explain that a little bit more a little bit later. One of the most important things is to stick to a schedule. If people get used to getting a newsletter from you and it just doesn't show up, they may end up losing interest. And I know when I had the Grapevine, before we launched the About the Valley, there was a newsletter that went out every single Thursday, and I would pull in some of the events going on around town for the weekend. I'd pull in some of the articles that were on there, some of the newer ones. It went out every Thursday, so people depended on that and looked forward to it to help plan their weekend. Think about your own industry. Do you need to send one out once a week, bi-weekly, once a month? You don't want to overwhelm your readers, but you want to stay in front of them, and you want them to depend on you being there when they're expecting you to be there. And then offer some type of incentives. We're going to go in more in depth on that a little bit later for polls, contests, giveaways, and things like that. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But there are a couple more things that I wanted to go over in this section. So let me pull those up very quickly. Okay, keep it very simple. So don't go real in depth in the newsletter. If you want to go more in depth, make sure you're doing that on a blog that you're linking your newsletter to, so that they can go in there and read it more in depth. In the newsletter itself, you just want kind of the basic information and then a learn more or read more button to take them back to something that has more depth on it. What happens if you try to go in depth on the newsletter is you lose attention. They don't read the whole thing, and they may just start with that one section, stop there, and go somewhere else. So if you can keep it just light and informative and links to longer pieces somewhere else, people will click on the things that they're actually interested in. You want to make sure you have some type of call to action on there. On the ones that I showed you for my jewelry design company, for not for the newsletter but for the welcome sequence, I had call to actions on two out of three of those. It wasn't a sale. My call to action on the second email that goes out is follow us on social media with links. On the third one, it was links to the different blogs on the websites, and that's getting them over to the site to start looking at some of the things. So make sure that you're using call to actions. You can, there is a rule that you can use 90% informative, 10% promotional. So you can put something on your newsletter about a sale that you have going on, a new product, something like that, that keeps them informed. You just want to make sure it's not the main focus of it. And then, of course, you want to promote your newsletter. So once you do have the newsletter down, you don't only have the option of sending it to the people on your list, you can also promote it through social media. And I'm just getting into MailerLite. I'm not sure how options they have on there. I know on the service that I was using before, there was an option to post it to all of your social media sites as soon as you send it. If not, it will give you a link and you can post it yourself. So head on over to the next question in this assignment, and we'll come back and talk a little bit more about the things the topics that you might want to include in your newsletter.